them. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started. For everyone who's on time, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. This workshop today is our second of our series for Freestar publishers. We're starting to do these audience development workshops to really help you grow traffic. And we're really looking to you to help us inform us on what we're going to cover in the next workshop. If you were in our first one, you might notice that this topic came up in our first workshop, and that's why we decided to turn it into its own session, because there was a lot of interest. So as you can see, the whole point of these is really to serve you and the questions that you may or may not have. As it was with the last one, if you were able to join, Lindsay wants us to be really interactive. It'll be presentation style, but if you have a question throughout, please feel free to unmute yourself, go ahead and chime in with a question. That's really fine. If you don't want to be on camera, because this is being recorded, please just go ahead and drop your questions into the chat, and I will go ahead and curate the questions to Lindsay as we go along. So thank you so much. And without further ado, I'll pass it along to Lindsay to get started.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, my name is Lindsay Valdez, and I am very excited to be here today to talk about image optimization. I have been with Freestar about a month and a half now, and this is my second audience development traffic session. As Lauren said, the goal being to bring topics of interest to Freestar publishers that will help in a variety of ways that grow your audience. So we will have some targeted at SEO. This is images. We have a Pinterest and different ideas like coming up throughout the year. These will be monthly. Last session was my first, and I was just kind of getting into the format of how these would look. It went about 45 minutes, and I felt like the feedback was that it was quite a bit of information for that time. So I'm attempting to keep this to 30 minutes of your time with Q&A throughout, but if that is, if we're full of discussion as we go along, then that'll be great. And we can continue on. So one thing here, let's start. Okay, so this slide, you're going to get familiar with, because I'm using it almost in the beginning of every deck. I'm either presenting with a publisher one-on-one or to their team, or in these sessions, because I want, almost from an educational standpoint, I want us all to be able to talk to the buckets that make up organic search when it comes to what Google is looking at. People tend to overcomplicate. I've met so many of you already. Know your stuff, know your SEO, and have some idea. So it's just, it's going to come easy to know that you can speak to these things. And then any session I do, and if it is in any way related to SEO or organic search, would kind of be within one of these topics. And you have quality content, images fits into this bucket. So I'll let you read the other four: technical, user experience, and then working on brand strength, building your brand authority. That's kind of the backlinks and trust, accuracy, signals. But today's, which is images, falls into content. Content is anything that you publish. It's all of it, right? That's videos, that's the text on the page, which is what people tend to think when we talk about content, but Google says it's everything. All right, and today we're talking about the traffic opportunity from images, optimizing for speed. It's a big concern for publishers. It's the number one thing that comes back on page speed reports for increasing the speed is images. So how to combat that, on-page best practices, and how images impact user experience. All right, so content, again, like I just said, like people think it's the words, and it is to a great extent. It's the user and the information you provide them. Images, though, it's almost like the underrated. It's not, people don't spend as much time thinking about the image strategy as the content strategy, but it actually can drive a lot of traffic. And second to that, it's one of the very first things a user notices when they're coming from a variety of ways that we're going to talk about right now. So making sure that you have that image that stands out, that is good quality, is important, right? I found this randomly through the search results, but it led to all these various areas. This is just an example of a site, travel site. On the left, that's her webpage. So this is under her control. And you can see on the left, she has this feature image. So many of you, as you're constructing your post, start with a feature image at the top. This feature image is used by Google in at least 4 different ways. On the top right there is your search results. So this is just standard search results, mobile, but it's on desktop as well. And look how competitive it is. A user searching for this lake gets now in the search results, where it used to just be the static blue links, through structured data and schema that's built into most backends of content CMS, will pull in the images through Google search if optimized correctly. So with one click, a user could go into any one of those pictures that you see. It pulls up a larger black screen and one click away from the content page itself. You can now, this is something I continue to find publishers don't know, you can now find image traffic as a source in Google Analytics in the sources. And then down below, people also ask, another area in the search results. It's pulling in a thumbnail. And we're going to talk about sizes in a little bit, but that is pulling in pretty much a square thumbnail to the right for people also ask. And that's the drop down of questions that we talked about last time, in which help you kind of create more content. Here we have a mobile thumbnail. So those are almost, and then there's ratings. Both of those are pulled in through structured data on the top right example. Those are on a mobile screen, different size. And then down below that is actual image search. And I don't know if any of you guys search the same way that I do, but sometimes I actually click over to the tab, right? You have your normal search results, but then there's the top Google, a whole tab just dedicated to images. And depending your niche, if you're a very visual friendly site, like this travel site, also food blogs, products, entertainment blogs, I mean, almost all content really requires a good image to get the click, and then it can be right directly in that tab in the screenshot of image search. So those 4 were just from Google. Your image, so you have this feature image and you have various images throughout your post body. As we walk through, it'll be helpful just to kind of keep in mind your own article page or content page, any page that would have images on it. And then depending on the strategy, you have social plays into the mix. So you're using those for your pin image, which is on the top right there, and below is Instagram. 2 other areas of audience that, when done correctly and really building your brand around image quality, can continually drive traffic. On the right is Google Discover. This is one of my favorite to talk about. You'll see it's a different sized image there. This can be a huge source of traffic for publishers. It's on mobile, under any sort of Google Chrome app. There's no real search behavior around it. It's just pre-populated based on your search intent. And then on the right there's many sources around the web of related images. So if you can get to ranking an image and have the certain optimization field set, it can populate in other related image sections. All right, so the opportunity for images is high. People tend to not spend as much time focusing on the images as they do the content. So why are we talking about them today? Image quality, one of the main factors that from all those areas we just talked about, is improving the click-through rate. if you have, in a sea of sameness is what I like to call it, if you have tons of images all over the web of the same topic, it's a chance to differentiate based on quality. Each and every one of you, I'm confident, when you scroll through recipes, you're just on a Saturday looking for something to cook, that image quality is probably what you're looking at even over like the headline, because those are all going to be very similar. You know what it is, you know what you search for, but that image can stand out. They contextualize the content, they increase discoverability, having all those areas in real estate that we just went through, digital real estate, helps increase your audience and discoverability. They can create brand awareness and loyalty using things like watermarks on images or branded templates, depending on your niche. If you're sharing information a lot, to have a logo, things like that on images can help increase your brand awareness. They can provoke emotion, increase engagement. As you're scrolling down the web page, images help keep the user interested. They help tell the story. All right, let's get right into speed optimizations. I would assume, Lauren, you'd kick in there if there were any questions. I'm going to keep
Yep,
going.
go ahead. I just dropped in the chat where people can ask their questions. No questions yet.
Great. All right. So typically for publishers, you're dealing with 3 different formats. This is traditionally how it's been. There's kind of been different variations along the way, but JPEG, PNG, and GIF are the file formats most commonly used. It's basic in the reasons you use each one, but surprisingly few know. JPEGs are oftentimes used for photos. So if your content requires your own photos that you're taking, or very busy images with lots complicated, how complex the image itself has a lot to do with the data stored behind it and the size, and it makes up the final JPEG file. And it is smaller in file size traditionally, but can be a lower quality. Many times, I want to kind of preface this entire presentation with this, many times a lot of with images is done on the back end, especially if you're using WordPress or wherever you're getting the image from. If it's a database, if it's not your own, that would already be in probably the preferred file size, right? When you're downloading and getting a GIF, it already is that. So don't overthink this. If you're already, already have a flow in which you find the image, and there may be things later on in the presentation that's on how you're optimizing the image on the backend fields yourself. But so if your system's working right now on file size, it's probably doing it for you. A lot of the things are done in the code, especially again in WordPress, automatically. PNG, you want to use this for simple images. If it's just, I used an example as I kind of set up this presentation, and I had found an ice cream cone, just one image, and it was naturally a PNG. It was very simple, not a lot of colors or transparent. I put at the very bottom WebP, which is Google's preferred format. This is what is considered a handful of next-gen image formats. Traditionally, again, it's been those 3 above it. This is a good option, and it's not, up until recently, WordPress would not convert the image. So if you are coming in as a JPEG, it was difficult you had to set up different processes to convert them into WebP, but it's actually recognizing that as a format now, making it very easy. I've worked with publishers who wanted to switch all of their images. It's almost like an image migration over to the WebP format to save on time. You want to let your current speed benchmark kind of lead the way. If you're running okay on the image size and quality you're having now, it may not be worth yet to make a migration switch over to WebP, but if they are something you're struggling with, I would recommend looking into the specifics around that. And then for sizes, this is one that's possibly done and adjusted automatically for you, but a constant topic of conversation is how they should be sized. So last session, I mentioned that a good size, if you're compressing images, a good size is 1200 to just as a benchmark. Many times you'll see it at 600. You may be importing at a much smaller file size. And if that's working, rendering, that's fine for now. As device sizes change, that's a little bit of why the 1200 was set in pixels wide. As that screens adjust and have gotten larger over time, it's continued. You haven't had to go back and resize. Lazy loading images. There's lots of plugins that can do this for you. This is where the user starts to scroll before the image hits the page. That can help on load time. The metrics within this that you're caring about when you're setting image sizes, or if you're resizing. So say you're using something like Canva and you pick a size, you're looking at pixels wide and pixels tall when you're picking that. So you're going to think of it in terms of being able to be responsive to both a desktop screen or like a browser screen width, and then however long. Sometimes if it's for Pinterest, you want it to be longer on the page. Those are pin images. Instagram's more square, and sometimes feature images are more rectangle. And then all of this kind of has to do with the star on the right, number 3. It's what you're aiming for in size. And so you may have to test it and play around with the quality percentage in order to get that 250 kilobyte or less. I uploaded earlier a photo without compressing it because I was before and after of 1200 by 1200 out of Canva, and it imported at a 2 MB instead of KB. It was very large. So I'm resizing it, dropped it almost down to 300 kilobyte. So that is why you're going to want to compress. This should either be done through a browser-based tool listed on the right. Any of those you can use as a service. Say you have aren't working in WordPress, have your custom site. You can compress the images in batches before ever importing them into the site. And then for those of you using WordPress, I believe every one of these on the right has a plugin version, which would allow you to, so say you're working in, let's use the Canva example I just used, you're working in that, you save it to your desktop, you import it into WordPress, into that media library screen you're very familiar with, and it's going to compress it as it comes in. And editing tools. So depending on your photo strategy, if you are editing them, so if you're having custom photos and you're using a tool like Adobe Photoshop, they have compression built in. It's going to be very clear whether or not you have the compression. Like I said, if it's not kind of coming into your CMS in a kilobyte, it's probably not being compressed and should be. All right, so that is some of the back end speed, how to keep them light. Let me say one other thing to that. It's going to, the quality and how many you're using on the page is gonna impact speed. If you want the fastest web page, have no images, have no ads, right? We've talked about these things, how that's not a good user experience. That's not good for revenue to have none. That's gonna be your fastest page. So basically, anytime you put an image on the page, there will be an impact on speed. But if you are being selective about which ones you're putting on the page, making sure they're contributing to adding something to the user experience, and compressing them, those speed optimizations we just talked about, it's far better in the interest of the user to have images in your content. All right, so
I have a question, Lindsay.
yeah.
Should you go back and resize old images if you have like old images on, if a publisher has images on their site?
Yep,
Should they go back and resize?
Great question. That, what I would do, I would be strategic about it. It's going to take time. Go to your phone, go to your desktop after this, see how they actually look on those devices. If you see things that would flag that they're not the right size, especially on mobile, instead of going back and trying to, resize every image on your site, weave it into the refresh and the updating process. You'll hear me talk about this a lot, post about it. As you keep your content maintained from year to year, your top performers, your seasonal performers, as we head into spring, let's say you look back a year ago and you see that you have 5 posts that were somewhat related to spring or seasonal in some way, you're going to refresh them, make them better. And as part of that, that's when you update those images. So make sure that it's worth it, right? You don't need to resize images on posts that aren't good quality in all the other ways. And then you can really work it into the process. That's great. All right, so page relevancy. This has to do, these are on-page factors. This is what, Google's looking for a certain set of things with images. You guys all know they use bot crawlers, not actual eyeballs to know what images are. So they rely on information around the page, around the image to contextualize that. And from a user perspective, they're only helpful if they're, relevant to what the person is interested in, is reading about, has searched for. So on your page, you want to make sure they all tie. I think of it as a gift. It ties together with the title tag, the headline, all the things we talk about in normal quality content. You have your text, your heading tags, the image, image captions. So the page relevancy is one of the factors in your control, especially from the editorial and the content front-facing side. And you're going to want to make sure that you're using quality images that are very clear, crisp, interesting. These are the 2 main fields that Google, from those bots, from their algorithm, is looking towards. They do have technology. I've always wondered this, and I heard it recently, if they can see the image in a way, or see the videos. That's another one. And turns out they absolutely have technology advanced enough to know shapes on a page. If you had a picture of a banana and you were saying it was the Oregon coast, they're advanced enough to try to, of course, it's been abused and manipulated, and which is why it's really just for safe search important that the image is what it's being claimed to be. So they do have advanced technology. What's most interesting is that they only use that very, very advanced technology for image search results and actual video search results, and not the main set of Google search results. So for those, oftentimes they're relying to those other signals on the page that we just talked about. They're going to trust it because the headline and all of these things on the page wrap up into this particular example, I believe, was Oregon day trips. So they know that these things are within this page that's all relevant. And then the fields you use is going to be how you save it, the file name. And this is done, typically you would do it before importing it into the site. You can also modify it in the actual media library of WordPress. And I want to say, might be Rebel Mouse, but there's another one that allows you to modify it within. Otherwise, just get in the habit of however you're saving the image, save it in that optimized way. These are very similar fields. One has, in a URL, you're writing dashes. The other one is the alt text. Helpful for SEO, so you can rank in those places that we talked about before. You do want to fill them out, but the number one purpose, I must say for sure, is accessibility. We talked about that in last month's trends. Websites being legally held accountable for accessibility, people with disabilities of all kinds to be able to gain information as they can through the page. And then people tend to overthink it, and it's very, keep it concise, simple. I saw some this week that were a full sentence with, with a period, and that's not the purpose of alt text. It should be just a concise phrase. Include the main search term. And be in that middle ground of long tail and short tail. You don't want to say on the bottom image there, beach. That's pretty broad, right? Is somebody really searching that way? You want to be in the middle, Oregon coast. You don't need to say Oregon coast with 8 houses lining the sand. It's kind of find that middle ground of what a user would find helpful if they got that image. All right, user experience. I just also published an article. We published an article on the Freestar blog last week that went even more into the different ways that images help improve the user experience. But we're going to come through them now. As we're trying to get the user to, for revenue purposes, see ads, as you use images to tell the story and keep the interest, they're scrolling through your post, and in so doing, seeing more impressions will make more revenue. You'll make more revenue. And in any way, also the engagement factors we've talked about. This is the time on page. This is the pages per session. If users are very interested in the images and they resonate with them, they're more likely to go onto more pages and view your content longer. So avoid overly stock imagery. These are intentionally on the right. You have like white man hands anytime you search an image database for computers. So it can be a challenge, right? To find an image that conveys a message, adds to it. In no way do you need to be adding 5 images just to add them. It's going to slow down the page, and it can actually kind of off-put a user if they're low quality, grainy, as you see in these examples that I used. I was telling people about a year ago that Google started putting more attention around images, which is how we can kind of come behind as an industry and say, oh, we need to put more attention in images. They started optimizing and redoing the image search results to make it a smoother path to the user. Discover came into play, and images are one of the main factors that will get a website into that Google Discover feed, which can be a great amount of traffic. So we were telling people to invest in quality images. If you're a news publisher or publishing 20 pieces of content a day, something like Getty or a expensive database might be worth it, might be necessary, depending on how you're getting your news images. So more affordable is Canva. Unsplash is even a nice free option. But try to, get creative, try to go outside, make infographics, to custom photos where you use your brand, watermark. I have a example right there. They're actually called image treatments when you kind of add a filter. So you can kind of get away with making the stock images look more interesting if you add these sort of your own touches for your brand. That said, having all of them treatments everywhere, make sure that it's still not overwhelming to the eye. There's also colors that are softer that you can kind of look into when it comes to imagery. But the overly stock ones, spend some time there. If you feel like some of your top performing pages, go through them, see the quality. You'll, again, time and time, here we go back to Googling, whenever you're about to publish a piece of content, Google it. See what kind of images the top results have, see what kind of information they are including. We have responsive. So there's there's a screenshot there. You know, this is when it doesn't adjust to fit whatever the device is. Much of this, many themes, almost any current theme on WordPress is going to do this behind the scenes. If you're doing it on your end, you use fields like source set, X descriptor, relative sizes to modify to make responsive. One thing about source set, if you're using that, WordPress will do it. If you're using that, it's almost like on the fly optimization. If you can, it'll almost generate maybe like up to, you'll have your thumbnail size, medium, large. There can be, an image can be resized in 10 different ways that's saved and stored on your server. And then for whichever device or browser is being called, it will pull the appropriate size, all while taking up less size on the your actual site. But make sure that they're responsive. You hate getting to a website that has a head cut off or has half of it. CSS2 can be modified for responsive images. All right, and then for me, this is the most important one. Don't forget the goal. These are there. I talked about it all throughout this. This is there. Images should make it better. They shouldn't be distracting. They shouldn't hinder the experience. Slow to load, broken images. This is a great project to embark on. I want to say maybe 4 or so years ago, when all of a sudden it became a must for crediting images. So your images should have a credit if you're getting it from an open source free database. You do not have to. Something like Unsplash, they say it's nice to, please do kind of credit language, but certainly if you're purchasing images, you have to credit that source. But people took them down. So publishers were going back to say, oh, content from 2009, I have no idea. They were getting these lawsuit and takedown notices, requests for these images. So they would just take down the image, but left the links in, and now there's broken or empty links in pages. Again, all of this ties into a user experience. But make it a part of bigger projects. If you're seeing tons of broken images in content, look to the actual piece. Is it something you would publish again today? Then find new ones, optimize them, make them better, republish, and bring that piece of content back into your normal editorial flow of content. So does it help? Ask yourself when you're doing it. When you see a recipe post, I was looking at one the other day that probably had 6 or 7 full images of like different angles of a finished dish, whatever they were cooking. It's not really helpful. You should have one, should be at the top. And then maybe use some progressive shots if it's something you're building, or in any way, if it's something you're doing yourself and creating, and can visually show a user through images the steps, that's a good user experience. Product links with no image, you're not going to sell that product. It is such a visual, right? People want to see what they're about to buy. Product links, next one down, should actually be expandable. Users love it. You do when you can click on a product link that's a thumbnail and it pops up to give you a better angle or larger. Infographics, great way to expose information, to keep that's more data or more visual. If somebody's going to be reading the story, looking at that longer, that increases engagement. Infographics are a great way to enhance the user experience. And then there's things again, kind of like the recipe one, where you have a celebrity and a publisher has published 10 images of one different stances of somebody on a red carpet or in front of something. It's slowing down their page, and the user is going to get tired of clicking through the same. Make sure that you yourself would find those images helpful. All right. I think we did it. Did I do 35 minutes?
Absolutely. Great job, Lindsay. Thank you so much. And does anyone have any questions for Lindsay on this topic or any other topics? We're also interested in hearing what you'd like to hear more of in the audience development realm. So does anyone want to share here? Or again, we are always happy to take questions via email. So yeah, drop them in the chat. Does anyone have anything else before we wrap today?
I have a question. Lindsay, what's like the best approach in terms of like bringing you into conversations with publishers? Like, I know there's a big difference we want to give the same level of service and we want to offer as many perks as possible to every publisher. But in reality, it's like tier 1 publishers, like top 200 ComScore publishers versus tier 3 and tier 4 publishers. Like, if we're talking to a big publisher, when does it make sense to bring you into the conversation if they say that like SEO is something that we could definitely help with? And B is, how do we like price this, or is it just kind of included in the managed service, so to speak?
Yes, I think the goal is to get as many people the information as possible, right? So I'm trying to work in a way that is part scale and getting information out, but also I've already met with a variety of different size publishers. So there's as long as they're talking to their account manager, I've been asked to pop onto calls that are just normal. It can be any sort of tier. For the more advanced audit, there's only one deliverable we're really like looking at that way at the moment, which is an advanced SEO audit.
Makes total sense.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. And that was Mike. He's also new to our team if you haven't met him. So it's always nice for you guys to see more people from our team. That was great. And then if anyone else, like I said, has questions, or we will be sending a follow-up survey to ask more topics that you're interested in hearing from. So if no one else has anything, I'll go ahead and end the session. Anyone?
Thank you so much. We'll be sending this out as well as a link to the deck, I believe.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.